Hello, and welcome back to Second Cup. I'm your host, Tim Heller. My guest today is Dallas-based voice actor Kasi Hollowell. Kasi primarily narrates audiobooks and works with Funimation, voicing characters in loads of anime series, such as The Greatest Demon Lord is Reborn as a Typical Nobody, Maid Sama, Trapped in a Dating Sim, and so many more. Seriously. Top off your beverage, get comfy, and enjoy this episode of Second Cup. All right, this is take two with Kasi Hollowell, and good morning and cheers to you.
Good morning, cheers.
Okay, so post-technical difficulties and my terrible Wi-Fi. Tell me a little bit more about this beautiful mug that you have and how you make your coffee, and is this your first, second, third, or fifth cup?
This is my first, but it is very big. This mug, oh my gosh, can I tell you, this is one of my favorite mugs.
Please tell me in as much detail as you'd like.
I got that.
What?
Yes, so I got this from Galaxy's Edge in Disney World. And
for those of you who are just listening to audio, it's this beautiful Tatooine skyline, and it's a little R2-D2 detail on, it's a good warm-up.
And there's a little Millennium Falcon right here, too. I'm a mug person.
Come on.
I am a mug person. Like, brief example of how I am a mug person. Short version, when my husband proposed to me, he flew me to New York and bought me tickets to, just me tickets to go see Hamilton, because at the time they were way too expensive for two. And I went to go see it alone, and I was having an emotional moment afterwards, and I'm like coming down from the tippy top, because that's where I was. And I was just kind of in a daze, and I'm like, all I can think about is, like, do I want to stop at the gift shop? And even if I did, like, what would I even get? I don't really wear show shirts anymore. I would get a mug. That's what I would do. But no, I can't deal with that right now. I'm feeling feelings. I'm having a moment, and I just can't deal. I get down to the lobby, and there is this man who's just flown me to New York to propose to me holding a mug. And we go outside, and it's snowing, which is my favorite. And I just ugly cry. And the poor guy, because it looks like he did something wrong. He's like, you know what I mean? Like, there's these two people walking through Times Square, and I am just sobbing. And he's like, just deer in the headlights, like, not okay. And I'm like, he's like, are you okay? And I'm like, well, I mean, no, but in a good way. And I'm sorry. And this looks terrible for you, but you did so good. Anyway, so.
That's fucking adorable. That's perfect. He crushed it. And in New York, too, like, people will jump in and be like, hey, is everything all right?
Yeah. And it was really
so he could have gotten hurt.
Did that. He could have. And I was really glad that I was like trying to like, okay, dry it up. But no, my family had been planning a Disney trip for several years, and we finally got to go January 2020.
The last time, yeah.
The last chance. But I'm so glad we did. And like, honestly, Galaxy's Edge was my favorite. So cool.
That's awesome.
And the shops there have everything set up to where it looks like the people who live there made these things.
I've seen so many TikToks and social media posts from people who have gone, and I really want to go because I'm a huge nerd and I love that stuff. But I also don't want to go because I know that I would spend way too much money on things I really shouldn't. And I should just leave with just a mug. But I love that. I think that's perfect. I told our first guest that, we've started slowly collecting mugs from shows. My wife is a performer as well. We have our background's all in musical theater, and we both got to tour Korea together in a show, and brought back some mugs from that. And since I got sober almost a year ago, I've just started looking. I used to collect beers from wherever I would go because I used to I don't know, it was one of my hobbies that ultimately was a little bit destructive. And I just started collecting mugs. And this one is a gift from, it says, "Let's Stay Home." And it's got a little cabin on the back with some trees. And this was the go-to mug for COVID because that's all we could do. Especially in New York.
You were going nowhere.
Yeah. Well, Kasi, I would love to hear a little bit more about you and what you do. I know you're a voice actor, and I've checked out some of your stuff. You're also a singer, and it seems like we may have some crossover with some friends from Sam Houston State University in Texas.
Yeah, that's actually how I got connected with you, was through Melissa Milano.
Hey, oh my gosh, Melissa, if you're listening, hello, and you're wonderful.
You are wonderful. I love her. I love her. I've always been in theater. Like whenever I was like tiny little, I have always done theater. I don't know how my mom knew to just always put me in classes and always, because I've loved it forever. And she was like, her story. I'm a chatter, by the way. I chat a lot, so stories
makes my
for
job
everything.
easy. It's okay.
Fantastic.
The reason why I made this, one of the reasons, besides like I have no other time except for now to do this, but one of the reasons why I made it short is because I have a tendency to go down the rabbit hole, as my wife says, and so down a bunny trail, and so I'm a rambler. So this is a great opportunity to practice distilling our message.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, my mom said that there was an event when I was 3 or something where I came in to the kitchen, and instead of saying, "Hey, Mom, I found a dead bird in the backyard," I had this entire monologue about how the bird that was flying in the sky is dead. And so she was like, "Well, we know what to do with you." And I've been in theater ever since. And I went to Sam Houston State, and I was I have been a bachelor's degree in musical theater, and I got into voice acting after I moved to Dallas because I met my husband on Tinder. This summer.
And what does your husband do?
He's a photographer.
Awesome.
So we're just over here living our artsy lives. That's what that is. But I met him on Tinder the summer before my senior year at Sam. So it was long distance for a hot sec, aka 9 months. And when I moved to Dallas, because I'm from the Metroplex, more the Fort Worth area. But when
the Metroplex. For those of you not in Texas, it's the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Dallas-Fort Worth is not one town. It is 2 large towns separated by a
many smaller towns.
Big spaghetti pot of highways and smaller towns.
That's spaghetti pot is exactly it. Yeah. But so when I moved back to Dallas, I mean this in the best way possible, I feel, but the Dallas theater scene can be a little difficult to like break into. It's a little, for lack of a better word, cliquey.
You're not the first person I've heard that from.
And so I was auditioning a lot, and I was getting good feedback from my auditions, but I wasn't quite getting in. I got a few shows, but it was harder than because in Houston, having been to Sam, I was doing a ton of work there. I was doing a ton of shows, and then I get to Dallas, and people are like, anyway. And so I was like, I feel like I need something that I can take a little more control over this with. But before that, rewinding a touch, I had an internship with Main Street in Houston I want to say junior year of Sam, and I was in their production of Into the Woods, and I was Little Red, and David Wald was the baker, and so that's one of the, you're together a lot, those like main 4 who don't die. And so I just kept asking him questions, and he humored me, and he answered them, and he's wonderful, and I love him. And one of the things was I was like, I want to get into voice work, but I have literally no idea how. He was like, okay, let me hook you up with a friend. About 2 months.
And for those who don't know who he is, can you just give a Cliff Notes?
Well, David Wald, he's directing with Crunchyroll a lot right now, and I believe he directs some with Sentai in Houston. Crunchyroll's in Dallas. That's Anime Land.
Yes, both of those are anime companies. Yes. Produce like most of the largest, and I think Funimation acquired both of them, or just Crunchyroll?
Just Crunchyroll, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, Crunchyroll and Sony bought Funimation, and then Crunchyroll and Funimation merged, and I guess Crunchyroll has now been called Funimation Crunchyroll. It's a little confusing.
Okay, cool. And Sentai's just chilling on the side of the pool.
Sentai's just hanging out.
Okay,
yeah.
Great, awesome.
But David has been doing voice work for years and years and years, and he was great, and he hooked me up with his friend. He was like, I'm going to send my friend your stuff, and then about 2 months after the production, I get a phone call, and it's Chris Ayres, who I didn't know at the time, but was like this giant. And so, like, he's voiced Frieza from Dragon Ball Z and all this stuff. That's what he's best known for. But he's a literal, he was a literal angel. He was the nicest person on the face of the planet. But anyway, he calls me, he gets a feel for my voice, and then about a week later, I get a call saying that I'm cast in one of his shows. And so I go in and I record for the first time ever, and it was terrifying and so much fun, and he made it wonderful. And then he called me in a little more, and then I got in on a couple other shows with Sentai, but then I moved to Dallas. Lucky enough, Funimation at the time was having some like open call auditions, which they almost never do, so it was very serendipitous. And I went and auditioned, and then I got on some people's rosters, and it kind of grew. But I felt with anime, I was waiting for other people to call me in. I was waiting for them to say, hey, come audition for my thing, which I wasn't used to from Theater World. Theater World, you submit yourself. They just shout it from the rooftops, and you go, okay, I want to throw my hat in the ring. So I wasn't used to that. So that's when I started branching out. And honestly, I just Googled different voice things. I was like, what can I do to have more control? And I stumbled upon audiobook narration. And that is like my full-time job right now is audiobook narration. That was 4 or 5 years ago.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's very, very cool. And it's good to know. I've recently accidentally also started an audiobook production company, so I will be reaching out separately from this and truly by accident. But that is so incredibly cool. So I would love to hear kind of what your take is on the anime and voiceover world right now, and your audiobook world too, just for listeners who may be getting started. Like, what is something that you feel like you've learned that you wish you would have known right when you started? I would call myself very, very self-taught when it comes to voice work. Like theater, I've been in classes since I was a kid, but voice work, with the exception of the moments where I've been able to have a beat to like sit down and talk with somebody like David Wald or, somebody like that, I just am figuring it out. So I would say that from my journey, from my perspective, the best piece of advice I can give is consume the medium that you're interested in. Consume it. If you want to get into audiobook narration, start listening to audiobooks. Find out who you like and why. And even to a degree, who you don't like and why. Why don't you like listening to this narrator? Because at the end of the day, especially with audiobooks, it's not a one-size-fits-all. It's very personal. Like, there are some people who and nobody's told me this, I do the thing you're not supposed to do where I go and I read the reviews. I read reviews and I probably shouldn't. That's bold. That's a masochistic move. Yeah.
Some days I'm like, this is pumping me up, and then I'll read one that I'm like, okay.
Oh, I'm never going to do this again.
Yeah. There are some, I have read some reviews where there are people who think that they love me. I am in their, they see my name, that I've narrated it, and it's an instant buy, and they're down, and they're like, yes, Casey did it, let's listen to it. And then there are other people who are there are some people who are just like, well, she's just not my cup of tea. That's fine. And then there are some people who are like, she was terrible for the following reasons. And I'm like, whew, okay. So
and that's going to happen no matter what you do, whether you're posting something on social media. If you are brave enough to be putting yourself out there and you are good enough to be able to reach an audience, it's going to be part of it. And it's the small people who will, we call it tiny pee-pee syndrome. My wife and I. And it can be anything from trolling online to driving like a maniac in a Dodge Ram. But yeah. It's bound to happen.
Yeah.
Know? But that's also, first time I started getting trolled online for stuff I was posting, I was like, yes, I made it. I've done it. Goal achieved. Checkpoint reached.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of what you were saying about being self-taught and all your acting background too, I think that I love what you said about consuming the medium, because it is such a wonderful place to start, and it is where a lot of people start that I've come across, or who have reached out to me about, like, how do I get started and how do I do this, and I'm ready to make this my 9 to 5. And I've had a lot of people also reach out, 2 or 3 recently in the past couple of weeks, who have said, hey, I've got a good voice, I've recorded some stuff, and I'm ready. Give me a job. And it's not, and I'm like, that's awesome. And yes, you've got a great voice. You know, most people do. I would listen to 99.9% of human beings talk. But there's also that other aspect that you mentioned, is that you have this theater training, and that is so much overlooked. And it doesn't mean you have to go get a degree to go and do voice acting, but you do need training, and it is voice acting. It's not just talking into a mic, and it is so much more than just reading a book out loud. And there's the people I'm producing some books for recently had to write a post for their client, who's a big business company, is all I can say. But it's they've had so many. We've started receiving all these books that were self-narrated by these authors, and which, you know, a lot of business books I feel like should be self-narrated, but you should have somebody there helping to coach you along the way who knows what they're doing, because it just goes beyond sitting down in a dark room and talking to yourself.
Right, reading the lines
There's a
out
lot
loud.
more that goes into it than I think a lot of people realize.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's whenever people, because over the years people have come to me and they've asked me, how do I get started doing audiobook narration? And that's noble. But most of the people, I tell them, I give them my advice. I give them the starting point, which my starting point was ACX. I discovered ACX, and then I got started there. And then from there, 2 other production companies found me and started giving me work through them. So I get paid a lot better now working for them than I did for ACX.
I mean, it's really starting a business. It's not just like, I mean, you can do it as a hobby. Absolutely. And if that's what you want, then do it. Yeah. That's beautiful. Take the pressure off and have fun with it. But if you want to make it into your 9 to 5, then you have to treat it like that, and give it the time and energy that it needs to just like take a second to breathe and grow slowly.
And I give them the starting point, or at least what my starting point was. I give them the best advice I can. I give them the specs for what my beginner studio was. But the thing that I'm always like, I can't speak for the more like chill, low-key, monotone. I am not a chill, low-key, monotone narrator. I am an actor first. The reason why people like me is because I do the voices. Like, it's because I have male voices. I mean, I am a female. I have a higher pitched voice, but I mean, this is like one of my dude voices. You know what I mean?
Hell yeah, brah.
And then I have to, it's a whole mental thing, right? You know?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I'm currently narrating a 5-book audiobook series right now that's video games, and you got to keep all the voice reference files ready to go and keep your head straight. And I mean, it's fun. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun. But.
It's a lot of fun, and it's a lot of like mental like organization. Because at the time, oh my gosh, whenever I have like, okay, 2 of the books I'm narrating, I'm doing 2 series simultaneously right now, and both of them are reverse harem romances, which means
so a little bit spicy.
A little spicy, and lots of dudes, and so
so many dudes.
And so the scenes where they're like all hanging out and all like chatting amongst each other, I'm like, who are you? This is you. Okay, okay, let's start over. Let's go. You know, and so you're like, this person said this, and then this person said this, and then I'm like, which voice is it? And so you can kind of get in the swing sometimes, but sometimes you're like, woof, that was the wrong one. And so, I mean, it's a whole thing. And at the end of the day, my acting training, considering I've been in classes since I was a kid, and it was my chosen elective in junior high and in high school, and I did competitions in high school, and then I went and I got a degree in it, and I've worked professionally in theaters for it. And I like, at the end of the day, I can give you the specs for where to start for a studio. I can I can map out how to get your first book, but if you don't have the training, I can't promise anything, you know? Maybe you're natural, and that's wonderful, and I love that for you.
Yeah. But even naturals, it takes time. You got to hone those skills, and this is not for everybody listening to this. I want to make sure that you know that this is not in any way meant to deter you or to try to scare you away from doing any of this. It is, it's just to let you know, like, hey, this is a realistic look at what this is. It's not a get rich quick kind of job.
No, well, oh my gosh, have you seen those like Pinterest ads or whatever where people are like, here's an easy way to make $5,000 in a month.
Not on Pinterest, but on TikTok. I saw a guy who was like, hey, do you want to make like $400 an hour with your voice? And I'm like,
just because you can
this is
speak
comical.
in English?
And I was like, all right? Scroll.
Oh my gosh, it makes me so mad. Yeah. I mean, like, it doesn't because I dare anyone to try it. Like, that's not going to work. It's not going to pan out that way. But at the same time, I'm like, I kind of feel like you're belittling my job. I'm offended.
Yeah. Then you just kind of scroll and let it go and keep making money.
No, I mean, because they're making their money. Their money is clicks, and that's what they're doing.
And they're nailing it.
Okay. Cheers to that.
Well, Kasi, it has already been 20 minutes. This is every day. The first couple episodes of this, all the listeners are going to be like, "Oh my God, Tim, we get it!" Like, wow, 15 minutes goes fast. But this has really flown, and I really appreciate you reaching out to be a part of the show. And I am 100% confident this is not the last time that we will be speaking. Before we completely wrap up, I have a couple quick fire questions. I'm doing this to everybody, and I just want like 1 to 2 word answers, whatever the first thing that comes to your head is. And it's going to be 4 questions.
Okay.
Ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Who inspires you right now?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's this There's this photographer, and I cannot remember her name. I just remember her picture whenever I see her pop up on my Instagram. But her photos are immaculate and beautiful, and I cannot remember her name. I just remember
mystery
her
photographer on Instagram. Send it to me when you find her.
I will.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Early bird. Great. When was the last time that you belly laughed, and why?
I think last night. My husband and I laugh constantly.
That's beautiful. Last question. You can only have pizza one more time. Where from and what's on it?
Gapco. Greenville Avenue Pizza Company. And classic pepperoni. I like having fun with pizza, but you cannot go wrong with classic pepperoni. And their cheese is like a Goofy movie, cartoon style.
Ooh, dirty. Yes.
Delicious.
Absolutely.
Delicious.
Second person in a row who said plain pepperoni, and I'm here for it. Yeah. I love it. Kasi, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining me for my second cup of coffee and your first. And I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Second Cup featuring our special guest, Kasi Hollowell. To connect with Kasi and stay up to date on all of her VO credits, follow her on Instagram at Kasi Dene. That's at KASIDENAE on Instagram. Second Cup is recorded and produced by Tim Heller Creative, LLC. If you're a small or large business and would like to sponsor the show, reach out to Tim at timhellercreative.com and we can chat, see if we're a good fit. Tune in next time for another incredible conversation and a wonderful cup of coffee.